Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing? Joe Barnes here, and welcome to the 50 Plus Nomad podcast. And this time, I'm hoping this is going to work in my recording. This time, hopefully, you're watching a video and not just hearing audio. If my recording doesn't work properly, then it may just be audio. But fingers crossed, this works, and you can see myself and my guest today, which is the fantastic Derek Hughes from the Irresistible Writer on Substack. Hello, Derek. Thanks for joining us today. How are you?
Hi, Joe. Yeah, I'm doing really well. Really glad to be here and chatting with you.
We are both Derek and I are currently in the UK. I'm down in London and Derek is up in Manchester. It's absolutely freezing down here at the moment. Derek, how is it up there in Manchester?
Well, I'm north of you, so it's even colder.
Even colder, right? In fact, Manchester, I was there in the summer last year for a week and it was colder up in Manchester than it was where I'd come from down south. So yeah, Manchester's a great city, but it's cold a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not my natural habitat to be cold. I've lived in Thailand for 15 years and I'm very much a warm person. So being in the cold right now, you can probably hear in my voice and my nose and everything. I've literally had a cold since I've arrived. But anyway, let's get on to more important things and let's talk about your journey, Derek, because you've had always what appears to be a meteoric rise, a meteoric rise, right? People always they never know who people are until they've actually done really well. You're kind of a completely invisible person until you start doing really well, and then people go, "Oh my God, look at this person who's come from nowhere and just had this meteoric rise into celebritydom." But we all know that that's not actually how it works. And actually, there's an awful lot of work that goes into it prior to becoming a mini online celeb. So tell us a little bit about your history. What were you doing before you decided to become an online writer?
So it's 3 years this month that I started writing online. So at the time, I was in a full-time job, and I was working for a church, and I just probably 6 months before, I'd changed job, and I was finding the job I was in wasn't as challenging and stretching, and I had a bit of spare mental energy, and I'm always reading and thinking. So I was like, where can I put these extra thoughts? And then I thought, oh, maybe I can I mean, I wasn't a writer. I'm not a writer by background. I was terrible at writing at school, but I was like, oh, maybe I could just dump some of the thoughts online. And I thought, okay, how do you do that? Where do you do that? And I bought Nicholas Cole's book, and he mentioned this thing called Medium, which I'd never heard of. And so I pulled it up and opened an account and just started writing. Pretty much 3 years to the day, and yeah, and got dead excited. I remember when I first posted my first article because I'd read Cole's book, and it's all about, he writes and he gets like 1 billion followers and he makes loads of money and stuff. And I was like, dead excited when I put my first post because it's on the internet, so like anyone could see it and like anything could happen. And then I realized like nothing did. Because like potentially anybody could just click and look at this, but like nobody did. I was like, sat there waiting, and then I was still probably excited for a few weeks and maybe even a month or two, that any could happen at any point. And then slowly I thought, actually, nothing is going to happen at any point. I mean, you can like suddenly go viral, but really the reality is for most people, just nothing is going to happen.
Yeah,
And yeah, and so nothing did in those days. And then I was like, right, okay, then what do I do now? Do you know what I mean? And
sure,
I've got
sure. What can you remember what your first post was?
uh that's a good question. I've never been asked that before. I don't know, but it was like pretty bad. So like nobody go through the archives on Medium because it's probably still, I mean, it's pretty bad for a while.
I'm going
Uh,
to fish that out. I'm
you
fishing
know.
that out and putting it underneath this video, Derek.
Because like it's funny because like if I look back now, some of my early posts have got like 13 views, like which is like really good because some people have gone back and investigated, but at the time it was probably like 0 views or maybe even one. So
Sure, yeah. And what thoughts did you want to, when you were kind of going through that and you bought Nicholas Cole's book and you decided you wanted to start writing, kind of what were your thoughts? Was it about the fact that you were a bit dissatisfied with your job and you thought to yourself, well, if I'm a bit dissatisfied, other people probably feel the same. It'd be good to share this. Or did you just fancy just trying something different and you felt it would be maybe a cathartic experience to write online or something?
Well, I've always been a bit of a kind of self-improver. I always like read stuff
Yeah,
and like apply those ideas. And so I kind of, a history of leadership development, a history of productivity. I was a property investor, quite interested in finance, always been interested in like happiness and well-being. And, so there's like just a whole variety of stuff that I read about. And I think, right, how can I use that to either live better personally or professionally?
yeah,
And so yeah, I was just doing all sorts, and even at the time, I was like, do I write about what I've known historically, or do I write about what I'm learning like right now? And it was just really a mixture
yeah.
um, at the time of just kind of dumping anything that I was thinking about really, and then even started and probably. It was just like the process of probably like writing at the beginning, and then I was starting to think, right, well, what do I want to write about? And because the excitement like dwindles quite quickly of nobody reading and just the excitement of like writing, and then because some people just love to write, they're like got this
Yeah,
identity of a writer, which was not me. And then I started thinking, right, like what do I want to write about? And if I wanted someone to read my stuff, like what should I write about?
hmm,
And initially I was thinking, do I write past stuff or current stuff? Um, and then I kind of come across this idea that really you should just test lots of stuff and see what
yeah,
resonates. And so then I think probably after 2 or 3 months, I'm quite structured in my thinking. So after 2 or 3 months, I think I had like almost four pillars, four categories I was writing about. And I was just kind of rotating them to kind of experiment and also give myself like a bit of structure. And then so one of the things I was learning about was how do you write online? Because historically, I've not been a very good writer. It's just not been my thing. So I was like working out how do you write, and then it was like actually how do you write online? Because that's even different from
yeah,
academic writing, as it were. So I was learning about that. So then that was one of the things I started kind of like just sharing, my embarrassing mistakes or what I'm thinking about. Because I couldn't believe what I was reading, about how you write online. I just never knew any of that kind
yeah,
of existed really. And so I get excited about learning something and trying it. So I was just sharing that as well. And then that started to do really well, which was like funny because that was the thing I knew least about out of all my topics. I'd been in
yeah,
leadership departments for decades. I'd done this, that, and the other, but like the newest thing I was learning was the thing that kind of did better. And
yeah,
I was like, well, that's a bit odd because I know like hardly anything. I've got 100 followers now, but I don't really know anything. And I remember speaking to Eve Arnold, who was quite big on Medium at the time, and just saying to her, I'm reading the advice, you should really focus on something. Should I focus on this? Because that's what I was getting most attention, but it's the thing I know about least, so I feel a bit of a fraud or nervous. And she was like, you might be too early to specialize, just see what kind of happens. And so yeah, I just kept learning and experimenting, and then I was about 7 months into it and I was like pretty much going to quit because I'd got to like 100 odd followers, but there's still like hardly anything happening. And by now I was like writing every day before work and I was quite competitive and which is really bad because you get like the numbers online, don't you? So something's quite judged if it's good or not. And I was just like, oh, I don't think this is working. It's for me. And I was about to quit, and then something took off after month seven, month eight on Medium, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't quit yet, because maybe some people like my stuff." And that just like it's like the hockey stick curve that everybody sees, yeah. And that's
yeah,
really what happened. It started going up, and then I kind of specialized around just writing and sharing what I was learning, and partly because it was more successful, but also because it was more interesting. It was what I was learning right now. And I knew if I
yeah,
wrote about maybe leadership from a professional background, it was all going to be historic knowledge. And I was a bit more interested in just writing and sharing what I'm learning right now, even though at the time it was what I knew kind of
yeah.
less of.
It's actually really powerful. I find that a very powerful strategy when you're kind of just a few steps almost in front of the people that are consuming your content and you're showing them. When I first started online back in 2010, I was learning how to use Facebook to build email lists and I was sharing everything I was learning. And I just grew a massive community
Yeah.
because people wanted to know what I was learning. And because I was only a few steps, when you're like miles and miles in front, actually, it's quite difficult to then relate to where people who are sort of just behind you are because you've now gone, miles in front. So trying to then go back and relate to where you were when you started. But when you're only a few steps in front, you're really relatable because people are just behind you and you're going, oh, here's what I learned this week about headlines, or here's what I learned this week about intros. And people are like, oh, great, yeah, that really applies to me because I'm learning how to write online as well. And you're a fantastic resource. So that's actually that kind of meta approach to building a community I've always found has been super powerful. So going back to those early days on Medium, because you raised a couple of really important points there, certainly about the whole, you got 7 months in, we're almost about to quit, because I think a lot of people, they don't even get 7 months in, they might get 3 months in. I remember my early days on Substack with my notes, just posting to the void, absolutely no response whatsoever. Even now, I might only get 8 or 9 likes on a note or something, and you think, gosh, this is hard going. But we all know that you've just got to keep going to get that hockey stick curve, as you were talking about. But I remember reading somewhere, and I don't know where I read this, you must have written an article at some point, but I remember reading somewhere that you became obsessive with posting every day on Medium. It was like a thing to you, like you had to post, you were not going to not post every day on Medium. Do you think that by posting every day, that's what contributed to your growth in the end? Do you think that's important to be that consistent with your writing?
Um, I mean, you don't have to post like every day, but I think that it's important to shift your focus. So what really helped me was shifting this focus from outcomes to inputs.
Hmm.
So the measure's no longer how many views I get or likes or whatever. The goal is whatever I decide. So if it's publishing daily, weekly, writing an hour, 1,000 words, whatever it is, you pick the metric yourself and you set that, and then that is the goal. And if you achieve that, that is success. And that's energizing because then you're successful, because it's up to me. I can get up for an hour early and publish. And if I do, I'm successful. And whatever happens, happens. But then inevitably, if you maintain that success, that consistency for long enough, something is going to happen. Yeah. And obviously the more you write, the quicker that is going to happen. I mean, you can't put a time scale on that. Is that going to take a month or a year? But I'll sometimes say to people I'm supporting, what I mean, imagine in 2 years' time you're still going at the consistency you're doing now, then something is going to happen, isn't it? You can't imagine something not happening. So partly it was a way of shifting my focus off the outcomes and onto actually the inputs. And it doesn't need to be daily, it could be weekly for people, but it's a way of taking control back from the algorithm or from stats or from the roller coaster, and you start to feel kind of responsible for yourself. And and for me, I didn't put it as amount of hours or number of words, but like the output of publishing kind of an article, etc. And um, and quite early on, I was working really hard on an article, and I was learning all sorts of tips from Cole and Denning and lots of other people, and I'd write a list of different ideas, and I'd apply them to my writing, and I'd apply them to my writing. And I remember one day thinking, hang on, some of these guys are massive and they know like everything about writing. If I just apply all their ideas to an article, then the article's going to be like the best ever and do it really well. And so I remember spending like twice as long on a particular article, and it had everybody's best tips in, so it was almost perfect. And I published it, and it took me twice as long or longer, and it didn't do any better than any of my others. And I was like, oh, maybe that's not it. And that article had like 6 points to it. And I remember thinking, six, it was too long, so it went to 5 points, and one of the points come off. And I published it, and it didn't do that well, but I had this extra point. I was like, oh well, I'm not going to waste that. So I was fed up because the article hadn't done well, and I just whacked it into a post and just published it the next day with very little effort. And it was one of our best performing articles on Medium, do you know what I mean? And it got like hundreds of dollars and stuff, you know. And so quite early on, that like, I was like, that makes no sense to me, you know. And so then it was like, actually, I never know what's going to do well. And even like applying for the criteria of all the perfection of what you need to do, which I still believe in. You've got to apply good practice, but it's not as simple as the more tips you apply, the better. So then I was just like, stuff it. Do you know what I mean? Just get this regular rhythm going and just get them out. And actually, I don't know if this is any good or not. Just kind of get going and take control by just setting my own consistency. And and I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, it was like, actually, if I just do that, at some point, success is going to happen. You know,
Sure.
something's going to happen if you just keep that going. You know, you don't know when, but I did know at the time it was just like a coping mechanism, you know, around your kind of mental health and the highs and the lows of writing online.
Sure. And what do you think? Again, I've got more questions than you're coming at me with some great points here, and I've got like about 10 different questions to ask you from each point you raise. So on that one, two key questions. Let me start with the what do you think made you not give up in those 7 months where you weren't getting a lot of views and a lot of traction? What do you think it was that kept you going anyway?
Um, I think partly it was some of the advice I read, which was like realistic of advice around you've got to do it for a year without expecting anything, you know. And a
Okay.
lot of the advice I was reading was less about going viral and more keep it going. And this idea, if you keep going long enough, so that was kind of one of the things that I kind of tapped into.
Yep.
And because I had seen a little bit of success, you know, that after kind of 7 months when I had one article that did really well, and then I was back down to earth with the rest, it was like actually something did work, you know, and so that kind of gave me a little bit of hope that actually at some point I might find the lever again. And yeah.
So it gave
And
you a boost.
yeah, give me like a little boost, and then I just got focused back onto the
Sure.
inputs, as it were.
And you were talking about how that you were getting these tips from the experts, from Tim Denning, from Nicholas Cole, from who all the other writers online. Were there any um, tips that have really stood out to you though, even though using them all in one article didn't work? Have there been any real key things that you've taken away from those guys that have consistently worked for you that you think, wow, okay, this is probably something that if I do this in most of my articles tend to do quite well.
Well, yeah, I mean, so many. I mean, you do need to apply all the tips. Do you know what I mean? I know I said that it's not so mechanistic, but um, I mean, all sorts of stuff. I mean, headlines is a big one for me. This idea that actually people are not as interested in your content as you are. You know what I mean? And so we write our article and we post the headline that we think is really interesting. And it kind of is interesting to us after writing the article, but it's like, you've got to imagine someone's like sitting on the toilet, they've got 3 minutes, they're on their phone, they've scrolled through 500 articles looking for something of interest, and you've got to be more interesting than all that other stuff. Yeah. And you've probably got zero point 0.5 of a second to grab their attention. And
Yeah,
then when they click on it, they're like, I probably won't read this because there's some other good stuff. So your first sentence and your intro has got to be enough to persuade them that this is worth reading. Just because you've got the click, you don't have them for the rest. So constantly being reminded of that in terms of how you craft your headlines and how you craft your intro, you know, that your first line needs to be really strong, and then you need to bake in your credibility of like, why should I listen to you? You know, because I hear a lot of writers, and the comment on my post that say, I've been writing for 3 weeks, I've been writing for 4 months, nobody's listening to me. And and I get it because I've been there and I still get it, you know, myself. But sometimes the way we talk as writers, it's like, because I wrote this, I've got a right for someone to read it. And it's like, you don't have a right to anybody's attention. You know, they've got better things to do. So you've got to earn that right and like be really compelling in how you structure it. And
sure.
probably and another big one would be just the formatting of the article. So I got that from Cole, which is like a lot of white space, which is a lot of single sentences mixed up with blocks of text. So you kind of vary it so that it's easy on the eyes to kind of scan round. So not single sentences all the way down, because that's as bad as anything else, but just kind of breaking it up a little bit, which is more and more common now than it probably was 3 years ago when I was writing.
Sure. So, at what point did you decide to start on Substack then? You were posting on Medium, you'd achieved a reasonable amount of success on Medium. You'd got like quite a few thousand subscribers, I think, before you went over to Substack. So at what point did you start on Substack and what made you want to diversify your efforts?
Yes, I was making about 1,000, maybe 1,400 on Medium, something like that every month. And people were critical of Medium. I guess it happens to all platforms, So a lot of writer friends were very critical and they were jumping off to Substack. And it was like, I'm actually fine here. I mean? I'm getting probably 600 subscribers a month signing up for my newsletter from Medium, as well as the money. And then I was able to sell products to those people on my newsletter. So I was kind of doing fine. And then eventually I was on a call with Michael Lim, who's a writer on Medium, and we were just chatting, and he was saying he's on Substack, etc. And I'd heard it for like the 100th time, and I was like, I think things had settled down, and I was in quite a rhythm on Medium. So again, I had a bit of capacity mentally, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll just like click on Substack. And so I started on Substack 18 months ago, and that was just running in the background for me, really. I wasn't paying much attention for it. And then about 6 months later, a lot of people were crashing and burning on Medium because of the way it was changing the algorithm. So everybody was losing their audiences. But mine continued to grow. So I was like, everybody's leading Medium and they're all joining me, and I'm getting better and better. So I'm great. And then February last year, so 11 months ago, then my views dropped by like 95% overnight. And it
No.
just like went. Uh,
Wow.
and obviously I'd written probably like 600 articles by then. So I knew what, you'd have the odd article that didn't work, but like it all kind of went. And so I probably lost, nearly all my money kind of overnight. And so I kept going. Well, I still like published stuff there, but for a few months I was still trying really hard there. And but at that point it was like I better like learn how this Substack works, because I mean I'd been going probably 6 months on Substack, which was just kind of in the background, just posting stuff, just gradually growing, but not paying too much attention to it. And then at that point I kind of did a bit more studying around Substack and how it worked and how it was different from Medium and what I needed to do to grow on it and give more attention to that. And then probably got like 6,000 subscribers now or something on Substack.
So
Um,
did your Medium views ever recover, or that's
yeah,
a bit sort of dead in the water now, is it?
yeah, dead in the water. Um,
Wow.
So
Okay.
I still post my Substack stuff. So I'm focused on Substack, but my long posts, I still copy them to Medium.
Yep.
But I don't pay any attention to trying to optimize Medium or anything like that. But it's like, well, it's here. I might as well just post it on Medium. But yeah, it's dead in the water. I mean, even people like Nicholas Cole will post their Medium earnings, which is like peanuts.
Sure.
So yeah, it's just they've just changed how they do the algorithm and what they reward and stuff.
Wonder what direction they're going in. Anyway, let's talk about Substack then, because similarly to you, I only started focusing on Substack early last year. I had a blog. I was not on Medium. I had my own blog, and I got Googled. I got absolutely, completely, and utterly crushed by a Google algorithm at the end of 2023. I was over 100,000 views a month. I was generating about 11,000 to $15,000 a month. Everything was riding high, and then all of a sudden, the Google helpful content update came out, and similar to your Medium one, overnight, boom, gone. And I could have pivoted. Lots of people who were running blogs at the time, they've carried on with SEO and AI SEO and all that sort of stuff. But I wasn't an SEO specialist. I didn't want to keep diving in. I'd already spent 4 years learning SEO and it wasn't
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
And I wanted to write and meet lovely people, which is why I came to Substack. And it's a lovely platform right now, but it is changing. So over the last sort of year or so, since you've been growing on Substack, how are you feeling about it? Are you enjoying the platform? Are you growing healthily? Are you thinking it's a great platform for new creators at the moment?
Yeah. So I've really enjoyed Substack and going all in on Substack. I used to write on Twitter back in the day, And so recovering the kind of short form style as well as the long form has been good fun. And I like that it's all connected, that you don't have to kind of try and juice the links, so for people who've been on Twitter or LinkedIn, they'll know that when you're posting a link, they don't like it, so you got to find ways around it, etc. But because on Substack, they want your list to grow and they want people to find you, then they don't kind of suppress any stuff and it's joined. So I like that it's just more natural. And I mean, it is overwhelming, which is why I kind of run a live cohort and why I help people. And some of my best performing notes, sorry, are just when I admit that this thing's pretty confusing or I can't find where this is and who's moved this and what is this. And so it is more complex than just posting on LinkedIn or um, Medium or whatever it might be. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't get too obsessed with. I mean, I wrote a post in December saying, because in December everyone's writing a post. Substack's changed. You need a new strategy for 2026 and stuff. And so one of my articles, well, like it hasn't changed. It's still about people. You know what I mean? You're just
Yeah,
observing people. So I never get too obsessed with like that the hacks and the latest thing that's in. I just focus on writing and helping people really, and those kind of more longer term strategies. And I mean, I do notice what's kind of happening a little bit. But yeah, for me, I'm mainly on notes and posts with the odd live and interview thrown in.
yeah,
And yeah, they haven't changed. They're kind of working pretty well.
yeah.
Um, I've probably 300 to 600 subscribers a month, probably. I don't even pay loads and loads of attention to that. I just see that it keeps going up, and that's kind of great. And some posts will get 15 likes, some will get 400 likes. I had my best ever post last month, actually, note that's doing really well, but that's just those
Yeah.
things happen occasionally, don't they?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's I keep likening Substack to Facebook back in 2010 because that's what it feels like for me.
Yeah.
I started on Facebook in 2010 and it was such a lovely environment with people supporting people before all the marketers came in and ruined it. And then they changed their algorithms. And Substack feels like that right now for me. It's very positive. But you've been doing really well, Derek, and I just want to talk about a couple of the reasons why. You mentioned it earlier when you were talking about Medium. And you were saying how you were building an email list from those readers. So they weren't just reading your Medium, you were actually taking them off of Medium and building an email list so that when your readership died by 95%, you had a backup, which is so important, having that backup email list. And of course, it's one of the wonderful things about Substack in the fact that as you're growing your writing and your skills and meeting new people, you're also building this email list. So I noticed that because I'm subscribed to you, I love your posts and I love your information, and it's super handy, some of the tips and tricks that you send out. But I noticed that you do have your Substack subscribers and you also have your email list subscribers. I think you're on ConvertKit or Kit or
Yeah.
whatever it's called now, which I'm guessing is what you started building on Medium. So, do you think there's any benefits to that, to having a on Substack list and an off Substack list? Do you port your subscribers from Substack over to Kit, which seems to me a sensible idea because at the end of the day, Substack is a third-party platform once again, and owning your list is so unbelievably important. Can you just talk a little bit about your strategy behind growing your email lists and kind of how you juggle Substack lists versus your own?
Yeah, so I mean, so if people are new to Substack, I would say just kind of ignore everything I'm about to say and just focus on growing your list
Okay.
on Substack and getting a bit of an audience. But if you've started to get a bit of an audience, I would say having a list on Substack is not enough. And those people who say in Substack is all you need, I wouldn't kind of agree with that because as an email system, Substack is like super limited. So yeah, I had a list on Kit before I came on Substack. That was where my Medium people went. And so really my strategy is Substack is my outreach to reach new people. And when people sign up for my stuff, they'll end up on my main Kit list. And the reason that I have a Kit list and I still have it is because it gives you a lot more features that you don't get on Substack. So if you want to create products, if you want to make money, if you want to sell stuff, then a proper email platform like Kit gives you a whole variety of stuff, you know. So like if people are interested in a particular product of mine, then they'll get a whole series of emails about it. But if people are not interested, then they won't get those extra emails. You know, I kind of separate my list a little bit so they're not getting kind of bombarded with different things.
Hmm.
And like on Kit, you can see what people are clicking on and what they're interested in. So you've got a lot more information. And I make quite a lot of money selling stuff, but I don't really sell very much on Substack. I sell it through Kit.
Sure.
Even when I send out an email through Substack, because you just don't know who's opening and you don't know very much about kind of what's going on there. So I use my Substack as the attractor to draw people into my ecosystem, and then really Kit is where I get the information that I need to promote the right things to the right people.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I control, and that's probably my greatest asset, really. So when Substack screws us all over, which will happen one day, whether it's through ads or whatever, then I'll jump onto the next thing. But the Kit list will stay with me. You know, that's my kind of community of people that I'm supporting and helping, as it were.
I think this is really important. So I just want to kind of reiterate a couple of things you said there, Derek, if that's all right for the people listening, because I've been in this game myself for 15 years now and have built very big email lists over the years. But I made this mistake with my blog. I didn't focus on my email list so that when my blog went, I actually didn't have that backup and I found myself kind of starting all over again. But you just said the words, that's my greatest asset.
Mm.
Which is so important in all online business, not even just creator businesses. It doesn't matter what online business you're doing. You don't have a shop in Oxford Street where people are walking past. So your greatest asset is that customer base that you're building, your email list. Even Amazon, their greatest asset is the 300 million people on their list with their credit cards in the system and all the rest of it. That's their greatest asset. Netflix is the same, etc. So very important. But also the other thing I did want to highlight is what you said at the beginning. If you're brand new to Substack and you're just starting, don't worry about it yet because you're going to get overwhelmed, right? It's really important just to get on and start building that list in any form, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And because on, again, I don't pay too much attention to the kind of back end of the details, but on Substack, people can, switch off notifications for emails and all that sort of stuff. So my open rates on Substack are pretty low compared to Kit. So even though people are on your email list, they can be not reading your stuff and clicking notifications so they don't get it. And so even then, and that might go more and more where people just read it in the app and that sort of stuff. So I think the ability to reach people can be quite affected. And I haven't seen any algorithm changes since I came on Substack, but that could happen at any point, you know what I mean? And suddenly your reach could really drop. So
Yeah.
having that kind of
Backup.
asset where you're building.
Yeah.
And if someone's like launching something and trying to make some money and all they have is their emails on Substack, they're going to really struggle, I think, in my experience.
Yeah.
Whereas something like Kit, which is a bit more complicated, but it's not that complicated when you get used to it. You can really create some good products and be particularly focused in how you communicate. And I'm so glad that I learned how to do that from Medium. And that's really what I coach a lot of people to do. They're all thinking about Substack paid subscriptions and stuff because that's easy, but really people don't make much money from that. And the people who know what they're doing, they're making it on products and services in other ways.
So let's talk about that because you've done very well with that over the last couple of years as well. So you said that you started selling products to your email list when you were writing on Medium. You were building this email list on Kit and you started to sell products. And now, you obviously do different products on Substack. I have bought a couple of them over the last couple of years. So thank you for that. Can you remember what your very first product was that you sold on Medium or to your email list that you'd built from Medium?
Yeah, yeah. So 3 years this month I started writing, and 2 years this month I launched my first product, which was the Ultimate Headline Toolkit. So I'd been around, I had a list for about 6 months. I only had about 500 subscribers on it, but I thought, I remember at the time people would say you could make money by like selling stuff. And I was pretty sure that wasn't true, that it was a scam and just like ordinary people like me couldn't do it. But I thought I just need to know, so I thought I'm going to create something and launch it, which I did, and made like I think it's about 1,700, something like that in the first 7 days or something, which I could not believe, you know. So for me, that's a phenomenal amount of money to make in a week. Like selling stuff that I've created, you know, I just couldn't get my head around. My wife was like, "What is going on? What is this thing you're doing? You know, are you sure this is real? You know, is this real money?" And I was like, "It's in my bank account. Look." So I was like, oh my word, this is like true. Like normal people can like make money and then that can just be a side thing. You could quit your job or you go part-time or whatever you want to do, you know. So yeah, that was the first one. And then just yeah, launched various things from then and just kind of kept experimenting and helping people really.
Sure. And what's been your most successful product to date?
Um Probably, I created a resource bank, a product called Resource Bank, which was the easiest product I've ever created. And I was sat in my garden one day and I just created a couple of products that had done quite well. And I was like, what shall I do next? And I remember thinking, like, at this point, I'd got quite systematic in my approach to Medium. So I had loads of resources on my laptop, you know, about templates and headlines and quick checklists and this, that, and the other that I was just gradually helping me so I could publish every day. And I had this thought sitting in my garden. It was a sunny day in Manchester, which is very rare. That's why it stands out. I remember thinking, like, I wonder if anybody else wants any of this that's on my computer. And I was like, actually, they probably would. I know that I would, you know, 18 months ago, starting from scratch. So then I just knocked up a quick sales page and turned them into PDFs and said, like, everything I used to write is available. And that was like so quick to create because it was already my stuff.
Yep.
And that sold really well for quite a long time.
Yep.
But probably 6, 7 months ago, I switched to doing more cohorts, and they're probably my earn me the most money at the moment.
Sure.
And if you don't tell anyone, the confession is I started doing that because I got a bit lazy. There was a lot of work to create a product in advance, you know, create the videos and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, I wanted to. I think it was creating digital products. That's what my first cohort was, teaching people how to do that. And I couldn't be bothered to like create anything in advance. So I thought, why don't I just like teach it live? And so I put up a landing page and set up the Zoom links, and that was like really popular. And then I was like, actually, I really like teaching live because you get to answer the questions and adjust in the room and give feedback and stuff. And so I really enjoyed it. So I launched another one, and then I did one about Substack, and that was really popular a few months ago. So yeah, I still do the standalone products and created a few recently, but probably the lives, which tend to be like 6 sessions over 6 weeks, which seems to be kind of long enough for people to do a bit of focus sprint. Yeah, in the world of AI, I wonder if people enjoy the interaction and getting to answer their questions as well as input from like a real person who's been there.
Yeah.
And yeah, at the moment, that's what I'm given a reasonable amount of time to.
Well, we're going to talk about your upcoming cohort very shortly, but I just want to back what you've been saying. I mean, I've been doing digital courses for many years, and many years ago, I'm probably going back 10 years, I did a live course, a 6 week live course called Forever Traffic. And it was all about traffic building. And it was so successful and so much fun to do because just like you said, you've got live people on the call, they're asking you questions, you're interacting with them, you're engaging with them. And I think you feel, I know I do, when I release a video course, you never really know what people are doing on the other end. But with a cohort, people are actively engaging with what you're teaching them, aren't you? Which makes it feel so much more valuable. And, you kind of almost feel like you're in the room with them. And that's how we ran our Amazon course as well back in 2016. So I can totally see the real attraction of cohorts. And I was actually watching a video recently by somebody, can't remember who was talking about how they really feel that the info product world is dying a slow death and cohorts are going to be more popular. And I think it's that community aspect. It's that feeling that people are learning alongside other people and, they're part of something. And they've almost got a little bit of accountability, clocking in each week and all that sort of stuff, isn't there? So from a learner point of view, I think cohorts are incredibly useful from holding you sort of accountable to the days that you're going to watch the lives and then taking the action that you're giving off those lives and then having other people to discuss it with and talk to about what you're learning. So yeah, I think cohorts are a great a fantastic route to go down for creators in 2026. So, can you tell us a little bit about your upcoming cohort that's starting very soon, Derek, and what that involves?
Yeah, so after I'd kind of become Substack bestseller last year and I think I'd hit like about 5,000 subs, I was thought actually I've kind of worked out Substack a little bit and certainly
Congratulations, by the way.
thank you. Uh, how to grow. And so I was thought it's time to kind of pass on that learning to others, which is how all my stuff comes, really. I learn something, I test it out, I refine it, and then I offer it to other people. And so yeah, so then I created this kind of Substack growth map. I was thinking, actually, how does people grow on Substack? What are the key ingredients? Because there's like a lot of noise on Substack, and you can get overwhelmed, and you can spend like hours and hours every day doing a whole bunch of stuff. And
Mm,
like some of it's essential and some of it is nice to have. And
mm.
so just cutting through that noise and giving people kind of clarity on what they need to do and how they need to do it and giving them some tips on the mechanics of that is kind of what ended up being the Substack growth match. And so we do a 6 sessions, one a week, and just focus on each of the kind of six foundations for kind of Substack really. And I'll teach some stuff, show some of my own examples, give people the kind of templates, principles, and then encourage them to do a little bit of work during the week. And I mean, people don't get the whole thing done during the week, but just start a bit of action around notes or posts, around recommendations, their homepage, all the mechanics about what really works and what they could like just not worry about. Because some things are much more significant than others on Substack. And I think in the early days, you need to know where to give your attention and like what really works. So yeah, so we had a great lot of fun last time I did it. Got some great feedback from people. So I thought, you know what, we're gonna do that again in 2026. So yeah, that starts very soon.
And what's the end goal? Will they hope to get out of it after the 6 weeks?
Yeah, so I mean, the end goal ultimately is give people direction for how to grow on Substack.
Yep.
Obviously, after 6 weeks, we're not promising that anyone's like got a massive audience if they haven't at the start. But what they will have is clarity. Yeah, clarity on actually what do I need to do for the next 3 to 6 months? What are the systems in place? And some of them are one-time things that you need to do to your Substack. But then, and once you've done them, that's fine. And then the rest are things to do from a kind of daily, weekly perspective. So it's clarity, really, is the most important thing. Because I know for myself, when you're trying to, you've got to be consistent. Everyone tells us to that. But the big question is when you're being consistent is, am I doing the right things?
Yep.
I'm happy to keep doing this for 6 months, but like, what happens if it's not the right things? And in 6 months, consistent isn't the magical thing if you're not doing the right things. So I think it's that clarity and knowing that you're doing the right things. And once you've got your direction, it's just a case of kind of keep going with it, keep it improving.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's no good, sort of plodding keep going if you're going in completely the wrong direction. And Derek, I mean, you have had phenomenal success. I mean, you've got hundreds of paid subscribers on your Substack, and you regularly sell your cohorts and your templates and your done for you stuff and all that sort of thing. And I do believe that last year you were able to pack up your job. Were you, or at least you went down to 1 day a week or something like that?
Yeah, I've gone down to 2 days a week in my main job. So I was able to have a meeting with my boss and basically say, I don't like doing these bits. I only want to do this bit. Because actually, I mean, I could quit my job, but there's bits of it I really want to keep doing.
Yep.
So, yeah, that was, I mean, I realize how privileged that sounds. Many of us would like to go to our boss and say, I don't want to do that, and I like that bit. But essentially, that's kind of what happened for me in September. So,
Privileged
yeah.
but earned, but earned. I mean, you started 3 years ago, and you've worked, your backside off over 3 years. So it may sound privileged, but it's earned, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah. I
sorry.
mean, I remember, yeah, I mean, you're right. The early days of like writing for like 90 minutes before going to do a full-time job, and writing on weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, it's nice to be able to just do normal hours these days.
Mm. And so you feel that the last 3 years have been life-changing for you, starting writing online?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because I wasn't seeking it and I didn't even know it existed, but yeah, it changed my life. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Derek. It's been so Interesting. I'm so happy that we finally met because we've talked and I've sent a couple of your courses out to my subscribers, but we've talked online on Substack in the chats and what have you, but we've never actually met face to face. So it's lovely to meet you. The cohort is starting on Monday, the 12th of January. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So this will be in your inboxes prior to Monday, the 12th of January. So I wholly recommend that you sign up. As I said, I've taken a couple of Derek's trainings myself. And what I love about you, Derek, I've said this in a few of my emails actually over the months, is that I mean, we're both British, but you're just a down-to-earth northerner who, you're not a dude, you're not a bro, you're not a hustle, all the rest. You're just a down-to-earth northern gent who has unwittingly, almost reluctantly, had a ridiculous amount of success over the last 3 years growing this writing business. And I'm such a fan of Substack right now. I'm such a fan of it being such a great platform for creators, especially us older folks who don't want to do the hustle and grind anymore. We don't want to be on TikTok dancing and 24/7 trying to compete on social networks. And the wonderful thing about Substack is the fact that you're building this email list as you're creating content and you're meeting, great people. So, wholly recommend Derek's cohort if that's a path that you want to go down this year. Any last thoughts or pieces of advice that you could give to anybody watching or listening to this today, Derek, about growing their writing business online or specifically on Substack?
Um, I remember one of the advantages on Medium is if someone highlights one of your phrases, you get to see who's highlighted what particularly. And I remember after probably being around for about a year or something, I'd started to post by saying how old I was, which I think, early 50s or something, and and that I felt like too old to like make this happen. And that got like loads of response. And so then I started to lean into my age and my experience. Because initially from Twitter, you had to be a bro young and 20 young or something, etc. And realized that a lot of people were resonating with that. And I thought, actually, the audience is not 20 somethings wanting to quit the job. There's a whole variety of people. And someone I was just coaching really recently, I mean, she's gone better than me on Substack, Ellen, and she's like 70 and
Oh,
she's like
wow.
mental health counselor and
Yeah.
she's like hit about, I don't know, probably 14,000 subscribers in a couple of months. And that's because she's just writing from her heart about what she's learned and what she believes. And so I think that like Substack is brilliant for that, that older people have got experience, you've got stuff to offer. And no matter kind of what age you are, there's people who want to learn from your ideas. And so the possibilities are just like really exciting, incredible for people. So I would encourage people to share their experiences, share what they've learned, because whether it's 100, 1,000, 10,000, there's people whose lives you could impact and change. And ultimately, that's like the most exciting thing. And that's why I love live cohorts. I get excited at the end of it. I'm bouncing around and my wife's laughing at me because if you've helped people, that's like the best feeling in the world. So I would encourage people just to kind of, if they've struggled and they want to give up, get back on the horse and share because there'll be people who really would benefit from their experience and their knowledge.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Really inspirational. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Derek. I hope it's warms up a bit today. And thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for listening and watching. I hope this has been super inspirational for you as it has for me. And I'll be back in the future with another interview and another podcast.